This guy has been regressed over 6 times. Despite wielding power that rivals a god's, he has failed every time in his attempt to save the Earth from the dragons that will destroy the world. This time, however, he takes a different approach. Instead of letting the dragons go their own way, a path that would eventually lead them to go berserk, he decides to adopt them. Yes, adopt them. He's going to raise these dragon kids as if they were his own in an attempt to prevent them from going down the path that would eventually destroy the Earth. Massive crowds flooded the neon-lit streets, staring in absolute terror at an ominous purple portal. Panicked civilians lost their minds, screaming for the police. But one arrogant young man desperately reassured his terrified huzzas, claiming it was totally harmless, and foolishly attempted to snap a quick selfie with the glowing rift. A huge fatal mistake. Without warning, grotesque nightmares exploded from the void, devouring the young man alive on the spot, painting the concrete streets completely red. Shattered phones littered the pavement beneath deafening screams. In a single heartbeat, ordinary life shattered into pure, unadulterated horror. Since that cursed day, demonic purple gates violently erupted worldwide, unleashing relentless armies of bloodthirsty monsters, dark knights, and bizarre cosmic entities invading the planet. Humanity teetered dangerously on the edge of total extinction. Yujitai effortlessly dodged the fatal strike, instantly crushing him with one devastating single blow, coldly declaring that he represented the absolute law there. The shattered criminal slammed into the concrete floor with such brutal force that his consciousness instantly faded into darkness. Yujitai stared at his bare knuckles, feeling deeply irritated with himself for failing to suppress his monstrous strength during the little cop roleplay. The guy seriously needed to hold back. Later that afternoon, rumors spread like wildfire. A random colleague explained how Joe Hoshik, that rogue superhuman criminal, had been cornered inside the shopping district during a frantic pursuit and had violently snatched an innocent hostage. Staring at the comatose villain, Yujitai's nervous partner practically begged him to limit his overwhelming physical force. Unbothered, our main character brushed it off completely. Scanning the room, he noticed 0 familiar faces. Honestly, he had literally abandoned this pathetic daily grind since his very first regression. The tragic reality behind abandoning his humanity stung deep, the brutal massacre of those baby dragons. These innocent mythical beings had crossed dimensions from Ascalippa, seeking joyful adventures and warm memories across Earth, only to encounter absolute heartbreaking disaster. Several had shattered their minds in endless warfare. Others crumbled beneath toxic human hatred, while some completely surrendered to despair, taking their own lives after failing their cosmic duties. Witnessing this slaughter, the ancient adult dragons unleashed pure blazing wrath, annihilating humanity and triggering an endless cycle of doomsday. Regardless of the god-tier power he had accumulated across countless tragic lifetimes, he had hit the absolute level cap. His power was boundless, but solo strength couldn't rewrite fate. Time for a totally new strategy. Just as Yogjitai prepared to leave, a female officer blocked his path, asking him out for a post-shift dinner date. She was quite adorable, but our ruthless main character instantly rejected her. He had bigger missions to run. When she asked where he was headed, our protagonist casually dropped a bombshell, announcing a sudden flight to Europe. Cut to Florence, Italy. A gorgeous green-haired girl was chilling in a sunlit park, giggling and entertaining the local kids. She crafted delicate flower crowns, radiating pure unbothered energy. Meanwhile, Yogjitai analyzed her every move from the shadows. Stepping into the light, he finally spoke up. She spun around, completely caught off guard, while Yogjitai locked dead serious eyes on her, demanding that she follow him immediately. Quickly activating a hidden magical translation ability, the girl processed his bold command. She offered a hesitant greeting in return. When she nervously questioned his motives, Yogjitai bluntly stated that they had crucial business to handle. Bewildered, she asked if he actually knew her true identity. Yogjitai gave a cold nod, prompting an incredibly awkward, nervous giggle. Trying to play it cool, she questioned why she should follow a total stranger. She admitted the only detail she could sense was his overwhelmingly monstrous aura, proving he didn't belong in her realm. Yogjitai simply responded with heavy, deafening silence. Staring up with wide, cautious eyes, she braced herself and asked if he was there for an assassination. Our protagonist just shook his head, offering total peace. Completely mind-blown, she anxiously stuttered, asking if she was being kidnapped instead. Yogjitai shamelessly agreed that it was basically the exact same thing. She tried deflecting with humor, asking if he was some weird dragon-obsessed creep, but our overpowered main character instantly killed the joke, ordering her to drop the comedy act. His aura sharpened as he declared his absolute mission to protect her from the chaotic, broken world, warning that her stubbornness would force him to use brute strength. He subtly brought up the Green Dragon Clan's legendary eyes, which easily pierced through normal illusions. He trusted her sharp survival instincts to recognize that he spoke the truth. Flashing a tiny forced smile, she asked if good behavior guaranteed 5-star VIP treatment. Yogjitai casually gave his word. While accepting that escape was literally impossible, she demanded to be treated like an honored guest rather than a captured prisoner. Winking playfully, she extended her pinky to seal the deal. Yogjitai noticed her violently shaking fingers, instantly realizing the truth. She was absolutely terrified of his monstrous presence. Regardless, he played along, locking pinkies to forge the ultimate promise, officially launching their chaotic new dynamic. Cut to the very next morning. The dragon girl peeked nervously around her bedroom doorframe, swimming in a massively oversized shirt, wondering if her terrifying new guardian was awake. She sleepily shuffled into the living area, only to find Yuji-tae casually lounging inside a terrifying, swirling storm of dark aura. Panicking slightly, she called his name. Completely unfazed, Yuji-tae coldly commanded the writhing shadows, assuring her that everything would go completely smoothly as long as his absolute orders were followed. Suddenly, the pitch-black mist transformed into a flawless, identical clone. This was his double S-rank ability, the Grand Duke's Shadow. The summoned entity deeply bowed to its mighty master, brushing right past the completely paralyzed girl. Her jaw dropped, realizing this terrifying phantom looked exactly 100% identical to Yuji-tae himself. Breaking the tension, he told her to relax, explaining that his shadow double was handling the daily grind. Then he casually asked about her sleep, finally realizing this overpowered individual was permanently sticking around instead of actually clocking in. He explained that since the clone used his raw power, he was technically on the clock. His true mission now was acting as her ultimate personal bodyguard. Chuckling nervously, she nodded along. She cautiously took a seat. Desperate to diffuse the heavy, intimidating atmosphere, she pitched the idea of a shared breakfast feast, but our stoic hero claimed that human sustenance was completely unnecessary. Refusing his rejection, she complained that dining solo was way too depressing, while her overpowered roommate literally just stared at the wall. Raising an eyebrow, Yuji-tae questioned her intense obsession with human meals, reminding her that mythical dragons didn't require earthly calories. Swinging her legs happily, she flashed a bright, pure, innocent smile, explaining that cooking wasn't about survival, it was about the absolute joy and vibrant energy of sharing flavors. But out of nowhere, she leaped off the couch, declaring their empty kitchen totally unacceptable. She demanded an epic grocery run to prove the magic of a real morning feast. Yuji-tae tried resisting the side quest, but his protests hit a brick wall. Flash forward, the duo pulled up to a massive, bustling supermarket, eyes glued to them instantly. She radiated stunning, otherworldly beauty while Yuji-tae carried massive main character energy. Even random girls were whispering about his insane visuals. Totally oblivious, the green dragon joyfully skipped through the aisles, humming sweet tunes while Yuji-tae trailed behind with his signature deadpan expression. He suddenly realized she was stockpiling ingredients like a literal apocalypse was coming. Questioning whether this mountain of food was truly just for breakfast, she quickly defended her selections, arguing their barren kitchen needed a total revamp, ensuring they had premium supplies for all their future cooking sessions. Her eyes sparkled with culinary excitement, but Yuji-tae completely crushed her dreams. He ordered her to dump the endless grocery bags at home so they could just grab takeout instead. Before she could even celebrate dodging dish duty, he dropped a sudden serious side mission that left her entirely speechless. She looked visibly deflated, but he stood firm. They had crucial, destiny-altering business to handle, and absolutely zero time to waste. Their next destination, a sketchy underground alley. She scanned the shadows until a cyborg-eyed old man stepped from the gloom, smirking and asking whether he had brought his girlfriend along. Yuji-tae instantly issued a freezing threat, growling at the old man to shut his mouth and simply do his job before he lost his remaining eye as well. Moments later, she emerged, clutching a brand new identification card, staring at the plastic like it was legendary loot. Eyes sparkling, she whispered that it was her very first. Yuji-tae was genuinely stunned, wondering how she had even survived in the modern world, without an identity or a bank account. As she inspected the card, she noticed her newly forged name, Yu-Bomb. Her curiosity immediately piqued, and she asked why he had chosen the name Yu-Bomb, especially since he had even given her his own family name. Yuji-tae casually gestured toward a faded Four Seasons storefront, explaining the simple reasoning behind it. Since there were 4 dragons, he figured they might as well be named after the 4 seasons. Yu-Bomb meant spring, making it the perfect name for the spring dragon. Her face instantly lit up as she declared that she absolutely loved it, explaining that spring symbolized blooming life and pure joy. The beautiful new name completely won her over. As they strolled down the street, she openly admitted that she was no longer afraid of him. Yet despite those heartfelt words, her dragon vision still revealed the terrifying pitch-black aura surrounding him, a constant reminder of his deadly nature. Even so, she flashed a bright, radiant smile and firmly declared that he wasn't a villain. Yuji-tae silently scoffed, wondering how she could possibly judge someone's soul after knowing them for only a single day. Overflowing with confidence, the girl proudly insisted that her green dragon intuition was never wrong. Our protagonist suddenly froze. She was giving him a genuine, completely unfiltered smile, a sight he had never witnessed throughout any of his countless brutal regressions. He honestly couldn't tell whether this shift in the timeline was a blessing or a curse. Still, as they continued walking side by side, a quiet thought crossed his mind. Maybe this fresh start wasn't so bad after all. Meanwhile, somewhere in Africa, a crimson-haired demon stood triumphantly over the broken, bloodied remains of a fighter she had utterly dismantled. The arrogant fool had spent the entire battle boasting about his overwhelming strength, yet he hadn't even managed to survive 60 seconds. Without the slightest hint of mercy, she slammed her heavy combat boot directly onto his screaming face. One final devastating kick echoed through the battlefield, and the screaming came to an abrupt end. Judging by the impact, she had probably shattered half the bones in his body. A wicked laugh escaped her lips as she mocked his lifeless form, joking that maybe her punches had been just a little too heavy. Wearing a sinister skull mask, she reveled in the explosive rush of adrenaline coursing through her veins. Tonight marked her 99th flawless victory without a single defeat, an undefeated streak she found absolutely hilarious. Now, the only thing she wanted to know was who her next victim would be. By the following morning, news outlets around the world were in complete chaos. Massive turf wars were ripping South Africa apart as a radical syndicate known as Barkata unleashed a series of bomb attacks. Rumors spread like wildfire about a savage monster called the Night Fighter, who had allegedly declared war on the South African Union, throwing the entire region into turmoil. From his office, Yujite quietly analyzed the reports, his sharp gaze confirming that the moment he had been waiting for had finally arrived. Just then, Yudabom, the green-haired girl, gently knocked on his office door and cheerfully announced that dinner was ready. Letting out a quiet sigh, Yujite decided to join her at the table. The moment he arrived, she proudly presented what could only be described as a culinary disaster straight out of a horror movie. Whole fish had been stuffed into strange purple rice, their lifeless bodies sticking out like reanimated zombies, as she eagerly waited for his reaction. Bursting with pride, she explained that the bizarre creation had been inspired by a British dish she had seen, except she had combined it with rice because obviously Koreans needed their daily serving of it. Unfortunately, the fish's lifeless eyes looked like they were desperately begging for mercy, and Yujite's pale expression said everything. His soul was practically leaving his body. Nevertheless, as he painfully forced down the cursed meal, Yujite casually dropped a bombshell, revealing that he would be flying out tomorrow to capture the Red Dragon. Yuji-Bomb's cheerful expression instantly darkened. She urgently warned him that the mission would turn into a complete bloodbath. Unlike her, the Red Dragon was her absolute opposite, a living nightmare to tame, who would never simply sit down and listen. Yujite calmly asked Yubom to come with him and help negotiate, but she immediately flinched, explaining that rival dragon clans never work together. Our protagonist raised an eyebrow as he learned that their instincts fundamentally clashed with one another. Yubom explained that her nature revolved around peaceful growth, while the entire Red Dragon clan practically worshipped brutal combat, raw violence, and constantly asserting their dominance. She desperately pleaded with him to understand that forcing the Red Dragon into a corner would trigger an absolute catastrophe. To dragons like them, surrender was a fate far worse than death. Yujite calmly countered that elite hunters were already closing in on the Red Dragon, and delaying any longer would guarantee her execution. Looking Yubom straight in the eyes, he explained that bringing the Green Dragon along was their only chance to prevent a complete massacre. Yubom's eyes widened in genuine shock. She had always believed this lone wolf of a man would rather shoulder every burden himself than ever ask someone else for help. Her surprise slowly melted into a warm, supportive smile as she agreed without hesitation, unable to bear the thought of watching another dragon perish. There was, however, one important condition. Fixing him with a deadly serious stare, Yubom demanded that Yujite finish every last bite of her terrifying dinner before they discussed anything else. Her sharp eyes hadn't missed him, quietly lowering his spoon the very moment he brought up tomorrow's mission. Yujite froze, realizing this dragon was far more observant than he had expected. In the end, the poor man forced himself to swallow the radioactive-looking sludge while silently crying inside. Somehow, surviving this meal felt even more difficult than fighting an entire horde of dragons by himself. The scene suddenly shifted back to Africa, revealing a ruined city that looked as though it had been completely wiped off the map. A sea of corpses covered the battlefield, while the crimson-haired girl stood proudly in the middle of the carnage. Looking down at the fallen, she scoffed at their pathetic strength. Even after securing her 200th consecutive victory, she felt nothing but disappointment, frustrated that the entire African continent couldn't produce a single worthy opponent. Bored beyond belief, she even considered traveling to Europe just to hunt down the Green Dragon. Only a few yards away, two surviving soldiers hid behind shattered rubble, their voices trembling uncontrollably. They whispered in horror about how a single bloodthirsty girl had annihilated their entire elite squad. One of them desperately prayed for their legendary savior to arrive before it was too late. In the blink of an eye, the crimson-haired demon suddenly appeared right above them, laughing at their hopeless attempt to hide. She unleashed a lightning-fast strike, but just before the fatal blow could land, a brilliant surge of golden aura violently intercepted her attack. The overwhelming force blasted her backward in surprise. As she deflected the massive impact, an earth-shattering explosion erupted across the battlefield. The terrified soldiers watched in complete disbelief that someone had actually survived her attack. As the smoke slowly cleared, a towering knight clad in heavy armor stepped forward. His piercing gaze locked onto the crimson-haired girl as he calmly asked if she was the infamous Night Slayer. The surviving soldiers immediately erupted into cheers. Their ultimate savior, Javier Karma, had finally arrived. As the African Union's 8th-ranked powerhouse, he radiated an overwhelming golden aura while calmly ordering his battered troops to evacuate the wounded without delay. Smirking beneath her skull mask, the crimson-haired girl mockingly called him an old-timer, complimented the sheer power behind his attack, and instantly realized she had finally found the true final boss. Javier carefully observed his opponent, genuinely surprised that someone so petite was hiding beneath such a terrifying mask. Lowering her chipped blade, she arrogantly joked that her enemies always became so captivated by her beautiful face that they completely forgot how to fight. Completely baffled by her reckless confidence, Javier questioned why she refused to surrender despite the overwhelming gap in their strength. The crimson-haired fighter merely burst into maniacal laughter, declaring that she would rather die with her weapon in hand than ever bow her head to anyone. Tightening her grip around her battered blade, she prepared herself for war. Pushing her agility to its absolute limit, she unleashed a relentless barrage of strikes against his steel-plated armor. Suddenly, a fatal opening ignited her excitement. Without hesitation, she ruthlessly aimed a crippling blow at his blind spot, hoping to finish the fight in a single strike. But the moment her attack landed, Javier remained completely unfazed. He absorbed the impact without budging even a single inch. Pure unfiltered shock froze her expression. What kind of indestructible monster was this guy? The armored juggernaut glared down at the red dragon, coldly remarking that she had clearly spent her entire life crushing nothing but weaklings. He warned her that her little playground massacres ended here, because he had absolutely no intention of holding back. Brilliant golden energy flared within his eyes as he acknowledged her natural talent, only to mercilessly declare that it wasn't nearly enough to survive against him. Without another word, Javier hoisted his colossal broadsword and unleashed his overwhelming aura, forcing the panicked girl into a desperate razor-thin dodge. In the very next heartbeat, he activated his devastating ultimate technique, Blade of Raw Ignition. Every instinct within the red dragon screamed in terror. Dodging was mathematically impossible. Crossing her arms to reinforce her defenses, she was struck head-on by a blinding shockwave of apocalyptic light that violently launched her across the battlefield, smashing her through a massive stone wall. Debris rained from every direction as enormous clouds of dust swallowed the battlefield whole, burying her beneath the catastrophic wreckage. Standing completely untouched amid the destruction, Javier silently admitted that the masked girl was an absolute monster. Somehow, she had reinforced her arm enough to withstand his ultimate technique. Realizing that even his strongest attack hadn't finished her, he concluded that he would have to raise his killing intent even further. As the heavy smoke slowly dispersed, Javier carefully inspected the shattered crater. A strange sense of unease crept over him. Had she somehow managed to escape? Well, the truth was far more surprising. U-Bomb, the enigmatic green dragon, had been perfectly concealing herself behind the shattered rubble. She tightly held the feral red dragon in place, covering her mouth to keep her silent. Red stared back in complete disbelief, utterly stunned by her sudden appearance. U-Bomb quietly explained that she had rushed over to save her from certain death, but Red immediately rejected the rescue. She angrily argued that the green dragon possessed virtually no combat ability, making her completely useless on a battlefield like this. Dropping her usual gentle demeanor, U-Bomb firmly warned that continuing the fight would guarantee Red's death. Red slapped away the healing magic surrounding her shattered arm and stubbornly declared that she would finish this battle even if it cost her life, ordering U-Bomb to stay out of it. In an instant, U-Bomb's expression turned frighteningly serious. Looking Red directly in the eyes, she coldly explained that her death would trigger a disaster that affected far more than just herself. As glowing green magic flowed into Red's broken arm, U-Bomb reminded her that survival wasn't a battle anyone fought alone. If the red dragon died here, the sanctuary that dragons had built on Earth would eventually collapse, leaving every dragon child without a home. Then just as suddenly, U-Bomb returned to her usual sweet and cheerful personality, pouting as she admitted that she genuinely wanted to keep living peacefully on Earth. All she asked for was a little cooperation. Red fell silent. For the first time, she fully acknowledged the overwhelming gap between herself and the Golden Knight. Escaping alive seemed statistically impossible, yet U-Bomb simply flashed a confident smile and assured her that their dependable old man would take care of everything. Red's eyes widened in disbelief the moment she heard that someone else was coming. Beaming brightly, U-Bomb revealed that she hadn't entered the war zone alone. Right on cue, Yujitai calmly stepped onto the devastated battlefield. Javier slowly turned to face the mysterious newcomer, carefully assessing the threat standing before him. Radiating an eerie calmness, Yujitai introduced himself as the crimson-haired girl's official guardian. Javier immediately burst into mocking laughter, claiming that someone as scrawny as Yujitai couldn't possibly protect anyone. Meanwhile, hidden behind the broken rubble, Red cautiously peeked over the debris, quietly asking if this was the legendary human U-Bomb had been talking about. U-Bomb immediately shoved her back into hiding, warning that the battlefield was about to become far more dangerous. Remaining perfectly composed, Yujitai calmly explained that the situation was far more complicated than Javier believed. Walking away now would be the wisest decision, but Javier's pride refused to allow it. He angrily declared that the crimson-haired girl had crossed the line and demanded justice. Yujitai calmly responded that her hands were free of innocent blood. That single statement only fueled Javier's fury even further. He snarled at Yujitai to stop twisting the facts. Still, Yujitai continued pushing for a peaceful resolution, promising that the girl would disappear without leaving a trace if Javier simply stood down. The stubborn knight finally snapped. Roaring across the battlefield, he declared that this was African Union territory. As a sworn investigator, he vowed to place both of them in chains. Blinding golden energy erupted from his sword as he activated his combat arts, unleashing a devastating slash powerful enough to erase everything in its path. The resulting shockwave kicked up an enormous dust storm that swallowed the battlefield whole. Javier smirked through the swirling debris, mockingly declaring that if Yujite truly intended to protect her, dying so pathetically was a disappointing way to do it. Then came the twist. Yujite silently materialized directly behind him, completely untouched and radiating a terrifying pitch-black killing intent. Letting out a quiet sigh, he almost sounded disappointed as he mocked the supposedly elite rank 8 warrior for being so painfully rigid. Javier instinctively spun around, his mind completely frozen by Yujite's impossible, almost godlike speed. Before he could even begin a counterattack, Yujite instantly closed the distance and cleanly severed the hand holding his sword. Then he slowly approached, radiating an overwhelming aura of death, and quietly ordered Javier to listen carefully, because his nightmare was only just beginning. With chilling composure, Yujite narrated the story that would become Javier's official report. As a righteous investigator, Javier had bravely attempted to capture the Crimson Dragon, only to encounter an unidentified beast. Unable to avoid its first devastating strike, he lost both of his arms and his eyesight before the mysterious creature disappeared without a trace. Javier screamed in desperation, begging for mercy, but Yujite felt absolutely none. He completed the script with a single blood-soaked slash, severing Javier's remaining arm and permanently destroying his vision. In his mind, the Union's elite healers would eventually save the knight's life. However, the terror carved into his soul would never heal. To Yujite, psychological domination was the greatest form of control. He quietly smiled to himself, knowing that even the notoriously violent Red Dragon, the legendary night fighter, would instinctively submit to overwhelming fear. Meanwhile, Red stood completely frozen in horror, trembling uncontrollably. She quietly asked Yujidam what kind of demonic being Yujite really was. Yujidam simply maintained her usual calm demeanor and casually corrected her. He wasn't a monster. Red stared at her in complete disbelief before scoffing. If that psychopath counted as human, then she might as well be an ordinary lizard. Honestly, after witnessing everything that had just happened, it was hard to blame her for thinking that way. A moment later, Yujite calmly approached the Red Dragon and laid down the rules. From this day forward, she would live under his roof and remain under his protection. He promised to give her plenty of freedom and reliable support whenever she needed it. Then, in an instant, his expression turned ice cold, his eyes sinking into a terrifying abyss as he quietly warned that the moment she crossed his boundaries, she would experience unimaginable suffering. The mighty dragon girl immediately began trembling like a leaf, instinctively preparing to run for her life. Before she could panic any further, Yubom quickly stepped between them, easing the suffocating killing intent while reassuring her that everything would make sense soon. Red, meanwhile, was completely losing her mind, internally screaming as she tried to process the absurdly terrifying situation she had just walked into. Yubom shot a secretive wink at the protagonist, treating the trauma like an inside joke. Their leader officially dubbed the redhead Uriam, symbolizing Summer ordered her to burn the moment into her memory, then casually strolled off, fully expecting the two of them to follow. Bomb leaned in, teasing Uriam about finally showing some character growth since their last chaotic encounter. Uriam snapped back, insisting this was no time for jokes. Meanwhile, Yujite's shadow clone quietly signaled that its mission was complete. Thousands of miles away in the Amazon rainforest, the real Yujite was relaxing with a stunning blonde whose looks belonged on a high-fashion runway. He severed the mental link to his double, privately congratulating himself on the flawless execution. He reasoned that sending Bomb instead of appearing himself had been the smart move, since Uriam was too unpredictable for him to persuade alone. The blonde caught him muttering to himself and teased him for talking to his smartwatch like a lunatic. Then came the twist. She was the fabled Golden Dragon, a diva who craved the spotlight and had dazzled everyone across 3 reincarnations. Ironically, her most radiant moment had triggered catastrophic devastation, and the endless adoration that followed had grown suffocating, driving her into this jungle exile. Though she'd originally come down purely for entertainment, she was idly fiddling with Jite's smartwatch when he bluntly asked why she'd chosen isolation among wild beasts instead of mingling with humans if amusement was what she wanted. The question caught her off guard. Startled by how much he knew, she asked how he'd learned so much, and he explained that Bomb, the illustrious green dragon, had already told him her secrets. He then asked whether humans truly frightened her. She paused before admitting that fear wasn't really the issue. Being among mortals just brought endless chaos. The constant staring and being chased around made daily life exhausting, so escaping the grid had made perfect sense to her. A comfortable silence settled between them before Jite randomly asked if she liked pastries. She stared at him, bewildered, scoffing that divine dragons needed no sustenance. He simply summoned a spatial pouch with a wave of magic, instantly filling the jungle with the mouth-watering scent of fresh bread. The moment it hit her, she surrendered completely, her eyes widening into sparkling saucers as she gazed at the mountain of donuts and tarts, asking where he'd gotten such a haul. Seizing the opening, he offered her a home, one far more comfortable than surviving in the wild, promising her safety and endless time to play with the others. She hesitated, recalling her mother's old warning about trusting strangers, but the moment he mentioned unlimited macarons, her defenses collapsed and she agreed on the spot. Meanwhile, back in the city, Yeriam leaned against the balcony rail as autumn leaves drifted past, wearing a bitter scowl and muttering about her earlier clash with the protagonist while Bomb watched quietly from inside. Jite then walked in with the barefoot blonde girl, who loudly declared her devotion to the sausage bread from the local bakery, insisting it beat anything from their home realm, and practically melted while eating a macaron, praising its crisp shell and chewy center. Bomb greeted Jite warmly, and the blonde lit up with joy at seeing her, sprinting over for a crushing hug and crying that she'd missed her terribly while gushing about how much more beautiful Bomb had become. She asked if Bomb had been living here alone with the mister. Bomb explained that she herself had only recently arrived, gesturing toward the sulking redhead nearby. Off to the side, the protagonist quietly dismissed his shadow clone, praising its work before releasing the spell. Uriam glared from the doorway, locking eyes with him in a tense, silent standoff before turning away. The blonde spotted her and dashed over, shrieking her name with excitement, then wrinkled her nose at the smell of smoke and mocked the Red Dragon clan's habits. Uriam clamped a hand over her mouth, threatening to yank her hair out if she kept talking, proof that her temper hadn't mellowed one bit. Gathering the three of them in the living room, the protagonist asked their real ages. Bomb said she was 20. The blonde proudly claimed she was 10, while Bomb revealed that Uriam was actually 15. Uriam slumped, looking utterly checked out. The blonde defended herself, arguing that dragons aged far faster than humans, so no one should treat her like a child. Uriam shot back, mocking the very traits the blonde was so proud of. The blonde then asked why everyone called the redhead Uriam, wondering if it was some kind of alias. Uriam brushed the question off, so Bomb explained that their master had assigned each of them these names. When told she would receive a title of her own, the blonde recoiled in horror, insisting it was wrong to hand out permanent names before someone reached adulthood, since true names carried real power. Still, she quickly worked out that her own role would represent Autumn. The protagonist nodded, confirming the decision and formally giving her the title. Then his gaze fell on her pendant, and he ordered that once the creature inside it hatched, it should be named for Winter. Her jaw dropped. How could a mortal see through her illusion? He explained that he'd sensed the polymorph blue dragon egg hidden inside her necklace, and told her to guard it carefully, since it would hatch soon. Stunned by how much he knew, she pressed him for answers, but he brushed her off, saying it was above her pay grade. His tone then turned serious as he laid down one absolute rule: they were free to enjoy life in the human world, but they were never to step outside the boundary of his sight. Yoriam hated the restriction and called him a dictator, while the other two exchanged uneasy glances. Still, she held her ground and dared them to argue. Eventually, the three of them accepted the terms. Will ever the peacemaker, Bomb suggested they go shopping for human IDs and supplies for their new life. The blonde was thrilled, though Yoriam sarcastically asked how they'd pay for it, joking that robbery sounded like a fun alternative. Unbothered, the protagonist handed Bomb a premium black card and told them to spend freely and enjoy being human for once. Stunned, Bomb asked what the actual limit was, and he told her there wasn't one. The three of them proceeded to clear out an entire mall, piling their carts with designer goods without a hint of restraint, while Jite's smartwatch buzzed non-stop with transaction alerts totaling tens of millions. Back at the penthouse, they were buried under shopping bags. Yoriam proudly showed off a newly forged blade, looking triumphant. The blonde twirled happily in her new outfit, while Bomb sheepishly returned the card, admitting she felt guilty about spending so much and trying to gift him some streetwear, only for the card to finally decline. He brushed off her concern. The blonde then demanded attention, showing off her haul and grabbing a shirt she said matched his style, asking if they could do a matching look. He complimented her outfit, and she melted with happiness. Meanwhile, Yoriam admired the gleam of her weapon, boasting about replacing her shattered sword and clearly fishing for praise. He asked if it matched her aura, considering she only hunted top-tier artifacts, then gave an approving nod. She scoffed that it barely met her standards, true to her usual icy demeanor. The blonde then rushed over with an armful of clothes, begging Yoriam to model some of the outfits she'd bought her. Yoriam flatly refused, snapping that she wasn't playing big sister. Bomb quietly told the protagonist that Yoriam was simply bad at showing affection and was secretly grateful underneath it all. He noticed that Bomb hadn't bought anything for herself and asked her about it. She gestured to a small sprout sitting on the counter, explaining that caring for living things brought her peace, and that watching flowers bloom created memories that lasted forever. Then a heavier thought crossed her mind, and she asked how they were supposed to find real happiness inside the safe little world he'd built for them. Good food and games were nice, but their souls still craved purpose. He promised he had a plan, then set down a set of academy registration papers, inviting them to experience real student life. The revelation left both Uriam and the blonde stunned. Sometime later, the three of them dragged themselves home from a grueling day at the academy, completely drained. The blonde trembled with anxiety, quietly confessing to Uriam her fear of being the one who failed while her sisters succeeded. Uriam, already irritated, told her sharply to be quiet, but the blonde gave her a pleading, teary look, crying that she was terrified of failing simply because she wanted too much. Thankfully, the usually cold protagonist stepped in and gently praised their hard work, trying to calm the tension. Yet Yugayu completely broke down, sobbing hysterically that she definitely bombed the Lair Academy entrance exam. Yugayu Bomb questioned his mysterious absence, and he casually mentioned he'd gone to grab a secret package. He revealed a warm box radiating a heavenly scent. Pure magic, honestly. Yugail's eyes instantly sparkled and she desperately begged to know if it was fresh pastries, but Jute promised a vastly superior feast. His mind flashed back to her idle days when the superstar dragon had been asked about her ultimate craving. The interviewer had playfully joked that she survived purely on mystical morning dew, but Yugail had laughed it off, insisting she had mortal tastes. She'd intensely pondered her ultimate snack, and then boom, crispy fried chicken and iced soda materialized. The dragon squad stared with wide, hungry eyes, like they'd discovered a divine artifact. Uraim immediately started roasting Yugail mercilessly, mocking her for looking absolutely clueless about fried chicken and exposing her fake television persona along with her supposedly favorite earthly meal. Yugail fiercely ignored the shade and instantly declared crispy chicken her new eternal obsession. Meanwhile, Jute quietly attempted a stealthy exit, trying to let the dragons devour their holy feast in peace, but Bomb blocked his escape with big emotional eyes, begging him to stay, radiating desperate hope for family bonding. But our lone wolf calmly turned her down. Refusing defeat, Yugail Bomb unleashed her ultimate adorable pout to win him over, basically pleading for his company. Yet his iron will held strong. Stepping outside, a sudden phone vibration shattered the chilly silence. The caller ID flashed the prestigious Lair Academy. A formal voice sharply demanded to verify his legal guardianship over the three girls, and our main character smoothly confirmed his status. However, the official quickly dropped a massive, unexpected problem regarding the recent entrance exams. He stood deeply puzzled, since U-Bomb had never mentioned any red flags. Then the Academy official dropped an absolute nuke. U-Bomb had utterly demolished the interview with a flawless, perfect score. The examiners had been so completely mesmerized that they wanted her to lead as a student representative and deliver the legendary opening ceremony oath. The Academy was so wildly obsessed that they begged her instantly, but our quiet girl fiercely rejected them, flatly turning down the massive spotlight. Now the desperate administration begged Jite to change her mind, terrified of losing a generational talent. Our main character brushed off the idea instantly, firing back that manipulating U-Bomb was out of the question, since he fiercely respected her personal choices. Conversation over. But right as he ended the call, a shadowy presence loomed. Uriam swaggered up, hair blazing wild and puffing smoke like an absolute boss. She demanded to know who he'd been talking to and whether Green was involved. His expression darkened into a heavy scowl, and he sternly ordered her to use U-Bomb's actual name. Rolling her eyes hard, Uriam trashed the name completely, calling it utterly cringe and asking if they were running some pathetic pretend family. Her intense gaze suddenly locked onto him, probing for his ultimate endgame. She demanded the real reason he'd dragged them all to Lear Academy. Our stoic hero replied coldly that he simply wanted them to pursue absolute freedom. Flashing her signature savage grin, Uriam declared her thirst for battle, desperately needing to know if this academy housed any formidable monsters. Jite confirmed that the absolute top-tier elites gathered there. Uriam merely scoffed, dismissing them as arrogant toddlers, but our main character fired back a reality check, reminding her that she currently counted as one too. Instantly triggered, she shattered the balcony rail, daring him to a death match, craving a taste of his true power and scoffing at his attempts to tame her. Yet Jite just glared back, icy and unfazed, telling her to go eat some chicken. That absolute disrespect sent Uriam spiraling. She cursed, flipped him the bird, and stormed off furious. While she raged, Gayul sprinted over carrying crispy fried gold, desperately trying to pacify the dragon by shoving food toward her face. Uriam prepared to unleash pure fury, but one accidental bite changed everything. Holy wow, that crispy perfection instantly rebooted her entire hostile aura. The heavenly flavor completely stunned her. Honestly, that meal carried mythical healing stats. But anyway, let's shift focus back to Lear. This academy was absolutely insane. A massive floating continent named Hatling casually orbiting the globe like a majestic sky fortress. Lear stood as the ultimate sanctuary for awakened youth, prodigies blessed with mind-bending supernatural abilities. Truthfully though, elite bloodlines and filthy rich heirs dominated the ranks. The ordinary masses harbored deep resentment, labeling it a glorified sandbox for the wealthy. Meanwhile, down on the campus grounds, Yugayul and U-Bomb explored the breathtaking scenery. Yugayul was entirely starstruck, whispering that commoners could never breach these walls. She genuinely suspected Jite hid an unfathomable secret billionaire status, given his habit of casually dropping insane cash. Bomb agreed it made perfect sense, noting his undeniable elite aura. Bouncing with pure joy, Yugayul hyped up their flawless admission success and completely obsessed over how incredibly sleek their uniforms looked. Suddenly, it hit her. Where had Uram and Jite vanished to? U-Bomb clarified that Uram had headed toward the Blue Dragon sector for combat trials, and that Jite had escorted her as her official guardian. These superhuman prodigies wielded catastrophic power but severely lacked basic human common sense, so guild veterans or family elders mandatorily shadowed them to prevent absolute campus-wide destruction. Yugayul totally agreed, especially regarding Uram, because honestly unleashing that walking disaster unsupervised was basically asking for a massive catastrophe. Bomb nodded along, explaining how Ram's brutal exam focused entirely on crushing rival students in duels. Hyped beyond belief, Hul desperately wanted front-row seats. Sadly, Yubom shattered her dreams, revealing that spectators were strictly banned. Absolutely devastated, Hul questioned this ridiculous rule, and Yubom casually explained that their combined presence would definitely trigger an uncontrollable public meltdown. Glancing around, the entire courtyard was literally staring at them. Everyone wondered where these stunning, otherworldly goddesses had suddenly descended from. Gossip spread like wildfire among the elites, mesmerized by their breathtaking beauty and incredibly mysterious, untouchable energy. These disguised dragon royals instantly became legendary icons on day one. Suddenly, the perspective shifted to Azure Dragon Academy's Chengchun Arena, where pure absolute chaos reigned supreme inside the battleground. Awakened rookies clashed violently with wooden blades, the roaring audience radiating energy like a massive high-stakes tournament. Jitai observed with a deadpan, chilling gaze. This pathetic brawl meant nothing to him. Nearby, a furious instructor screamed at his students to strike harder. Then a creepy, long-haired professor flashed a sinister smirk, ordering everyone to chill out and prioritize the fragile mental health of these young warriors. This mysterious figure approached their group, revealing himself as Wei Yan, the highly esteemed supreme professor ruling the Blue Dragon faction, and smoothly expressed his profound honor to collaborate with the Guardians. Nearby, adults completely fangirled, worshipping his legendary status. Yet Jite remained completely cold and unfazed. Spectators continued hyping up this elite professor, leaking rumors that he wielded immense wealth alongside a legendary war hero background. Booming through the speakers, the announcer's massive voice demanded combatants number 124 and number 7 enter the fray. Our main character narrowed his predatory gaze while Yuriam dragged her wooden blade into the arena, radiating absolute god-tier boredom. She coldly muttered that if this fight sucked, she was abandoning this pathetic school for good. Locking her piercing glare onto a blonde rival, she silently prayed for a real challenge. The audience erupted, debating who would survive, Sophia or the redhead. One spectator totally simps for the fiery redhead, but his buddy snapped him back to reality, arguing the real hype was about survival, not looks. He bet everything on Sophia securing the victory, considering her hardcore background in the elite Royal military forces long before she'd ever set foot on campus. The Uriel was Russia's apex airborne hunter unit, notoriously feared for subjecting their recruits to absolute hellish torture. Down by the cage, a hulking giant went completely feral, screaming at his girl to obliterate her opponent, broadcasting his massive, suffocating expectations to the entire roaring stadium. Sophia just stood there frozen, practically begging the earth to swallow her whole from the sheer, agonizing cringe. Her opponent, Yeriam, an absolute menace who thrived on psychological warfare, caught the vibe and immediately launched into vicious trash talk, mocking the giant's unhinged screaming and turning the disrespect up to maximum. She suggested the little princess should just forfeit and go cry in daddy's arms, sneering the words daddy's girl with a highly punchable, totally toxic smirk. Instantly, Sophia's entire demeanor shattered. She locked a death glare onto Yeriam and hissed with freezing malice for her to shut her filthy mouth immediately, promising the redhead that one more word would guarantee her a body bag. Pure, unadulterated murder blazed wildly in her eyes. But honestly, Yoriam was feeding off the chaos. She just flashed a psychotic grin, practically begging Sophia to strike. The spectators instantly tasted the heavy, suffocating bloodlust, murmuring that this lethal aura was classic Royal Hunter energy. Though they had to admit, Yoriam radiated absolute boss energy too. The atmosphere shifted into pure, terrifying anticipation for the upcoming slaughter. The buzzer blared. Sophia launched like a fired missile. They violently collided, but Yoriam effortlessly deflected the explosive opening strike, dropping a cocky remark about her decent velocity. Then, shifting her weight flawlessly, she unleashed a devastating counterattack, whipping her weapon around and roaring for her to come eat this strike. But Sophia refused to flinch. She blitzed back in, executing a blindingly fast combo that Yoriam barely parried, tearing her outfit in the process. Yoriam completely lost her mind over it. That outfit had been brand new. Sophia showed zero mercy, relentlessly hacking away, hunting Yoriam across the arena in brutal, breathless close-quarters combat. The stadium went totally feral as explosive shockwaves echoed endlessly. Sophia launched a sweeping low kick, but Yoriam defied gravity, vaulted off the iron cage like a ninja, and plummeted like a meteor with her blade locked onto her skull. Sophia desperately raised her guard, but the catastrophic impact violently shattered her defense, and a pathetic whimper escaped her lips. Smelling blood, Yoriam went totally goblin mode, unleashing a flurry of strikes that forced a terrified Sophia into a desperate, crumbling retreat. Then, like a phantom, she vanished behind her and whispered that Sophia only felt powerful because she'd been holding back. Then she initiated absolute annihilation, delivering devastating combos until Sophia crumpled lifelessly onto the cold, hard canvas, violently coughing up crimson. Paralyzed, Sophia lay there as Yoriam towered over her, blade aimed at her throat, while the referee declared candidate 124 the undeniable champion. Yoriam chuckled darkly, dismissing her fake gangster energy as pure pathetic weakness. That specific insult ignited Sophia's deepest rage. This crimson-haired menace was a masterclass troll at baiting aggro. Sophia's guardian sprinted toward the carnage, screaming her name. The audience immediately started buzzing, roasting the so-called elite hunter for getting absolutely folded, marveling at the total massacre. Despite the initial hype, the stadium worshipped Yoriam's flawless victory, pointing out she'd practically dodged every single scratch, treating a trained killer like a helpless toy. The brutal disrespect continued, with rumors spreading that Sophia had only passed admissions through pretty privilege instead of actual combat talent. Simultaneously, a frantic field medic sprinted over and enveloped Sophia in a vibrant emerald healing aura. Yet Sophia remained frozen, her face completely shadowed, bangs obscuring her dead eyes, absorbing the toxic whispers that labeled her a pathetic, easily shattered glass cannon. The medic grimly informed the Guardian that Sophia had suffered shattered arms and would need serious recovery time. Trembling violently, Sophia desperately insisted she was completely fine. Her guardian stepped in to soften the blow, flashing a heartbroken smile and gently reassuring her that she'd fought bravely against an impossible god-tier opponent. He told her he felt zero disappointment, hoping this crushing tragedy would forge her into an unstoppable force. Later on, he offered some deep philosophical wisdom about leveling up through bitter, agonizing failure. Mid-sentence, the panicked medic shrieked in absolute terror, pointing at his daughter as she stalked back toward Yoriam. Out of the void, Sophia manifested a wicked dagger. With an unnerving, demonic whisper, she declared that this wasn't a surrender, just a tactical retreat. Pure unhinged insanity had fractured her pupils. Her mind was completely gone. Sophia shrieked like a lunatic, demanding to know where she thought she was running. This deathmatch was far from over. Something inside Sophia had completely shattered. Meanwhile, Yoriam casually walked away, convinced the war had ended. Leaping forward with pure killing intent, she plunged a blade right into her back. Meanwhile, our main character just watched from above, cold and silent. He didn't even blink. Down below, absolute fury consumed Yoriam's eyes as reality hit her. Spitting venomous curses, she raged that she couldn't believe a literal child had just backstabbed her like some coward. Screaming bloody murder, Sophia charged like an absolute psycho, and the entire arena instantly exploded into chaos. Panic swept through the stands as teachers and students watched a simple sparring match mutate into a gruesome crime scene. The truth clicked. If this crazy girl wanted a literal fight to the death, Yoriam would happily oblige. Her hand clamped down on Sophia's hair, ripping a sheer wail of agony from her lungs. Playtime was officially over. A brutal right hook instantly shattered the girl's arrogant face. But she wasn't done. The merciless beatdown continued, crimson splattering across the arena floor with every strike. The entire student body watched in pure paralyzed horror, minds reeling, wondering why the hell no one was stepping in. Gathering her aura, Yoriam unleashed one final devastating blow. The impact instantly knocked Sophia into a bloody, unconscious heap. Yoriam stood above her, gasping for breath, yet her savage glare remained fixed on the broken body. It was not over. Snatching the dropped blade, she advanced, hellfire burning in her eyes. She promised to repay that treacherous strike tenfold. But right before she claimed her bloody vengeance, Sophia's father crashed into the arena, intercepting her wrist. He roared at her to stand down, claiming the debt was already paid. Professor Waiyan finally snapped into action, barking urgent orders and commanding the Academy mages to deploy a spatial restriction spell. He declared an immediate suspension of the exam, and blinding azure mana erupted, trapping everyone within a suffocating magical lockdown. Seems like this brat got the bias on her side. Yoriam was absolutely furious. She screamed at the hypocrisy of it all. Why was she the villain when that brat had cowardly stabbed her first? She spat out the facts. With that massive guy's aura level, he could have easily subdued his own daughter peacefully. Absolute facts right there. Playing the peacemaker, Waiyan instructed the giant to tend to his bleeding child. Then shifting his gaze to Yoriam, he flashed a chillingly calm smile and claimed staff were already retrieving her guardian. She just needed to wait and heal. But Yoriam viciously bit back. Silence was not an option when her blood was literally boiling. Dropping his friendly facade, Waiyan whispered that he had witnessed everything, playing the sympathetic card, yet warned that if her rampage continued, his protection would completely vanish. A dark warning lingered in his words. Her entire bloodline would suffer the consequences. He casually dropped a sinister hint about her hidden sister, and that froze Yoriam dead in her tracks. But the actual hell did this creep know? Waiyan cornered her with a straight-up threat. Keep pushing and everyone she loved would become a target. Safety would become a myth. Flashing a twisted, knowing smirk, he ordered her to wait for her guardian. This professor is pure garbage, but suddenly the main character arrived like an absolute boss, commanding Waiyan to cancel the search. Her guardian had arrived. Without breaking a sweat, Jitai phased right through the ultimate magical barrier, shattering the spell like thin air. He demanded that the professor step away from the wounded girl and deal with him instead. Yoriam stood there, stunned but visibly relieved. Meanwhile, Waiyan was absolutely paralyzed. How could a total nobody with zero backing casually shatter a master-level barrier? Cut to the principal's office, where two guardians sat in pure tension. Waiyan played it cool, pouring fancy tea, but internally he was sweating bullets. Jitai radiated monstrous strength, yet this mysterious Yu family did not even exist on his radar. A background check was definitely needed later. Forcing a pathetic, nervous laugh, Waiyan opened the meeting with a hollow apology for the arena bloodbath, quickly spinning the narrative. The good news, he said, was that there were no fatal casualties. Sophia was currently inside the healing ward, while Uriam had already fully recovered. He shamelessly proposed sweeping the entire mess under the rug. They were academy classmates after all, and promised to erase the incident records if both parties simply shook hands. Sophia's massive father Mikhailov sat like a stone mountain, eyes closed in total silence. Finally, he confessed that his bloodline had instigated the violent clash and offered the first apology. Presenting himself as Sophia's protector, he blamed the brutal ambush on pure youthful recklessness, claiming she had simply lost control of her mana. But Jite remained an absolute statue. Piercing Mikhailov with a dead, freezing glare, he outright rejected this proxy apology. The culprit herself needed to beg for forgiveness. Mikhailov's aura instantly erupted. He called Jite an arrogant fool, asking if he was acting tough because he was blind to Mikhailov's underworld connections. Jite literally did not care. Taking a slow, calm sip of tea, he smoothly asked whether this pathetic display was considered an apology in Mikhailov's homeland. Mikhailov snapped, surging to his feet with blazing fury and roaring, demanding to know if the main character expected him to violently drag Sophia here to apologize. Jite instantly replied with a deadpan yes. Savage, the killing intent in that room was suffocating. Watching two titans clash, Woo-young completely panicked. Flashing an anxious smile, he desperately tried to defuse the bomb. But Jite laid down the law. He was not here for empty words. He demanded to know why Mikhailov had just stood there when Sophia lunged with that blade. Mikhailov barked back that the ambush had simply been too fast. Jite ripped into that pathetic alibi, coldly asking if hiding behind a child while failing his actual duty didn't completely crush his pride. That shattered Mikhailov's patience. He slammed his foot down, snatched Jite's collar, and growled a bone-chilling threat. Lethal blue aura exploded from him as he dared Jite to cross the mighty I-Rail organization in this insignificant little country, projecting fake alpha energy and trashing the Yu family as though they were absolute nobodies. Suddenly, a deadly blade was aimed right at him, and pure panic washed over his face. Where the hell did this weapon come from? Jite casually praised the edge of Mikhailov's own weapon, warning that a single twitch could easily paint the room red. Mikhailov completely froze, his eyes dropping as he realized Jite was effortlessly wielding his signature dagger, the exact weapon he always kept concealed. Shock widened his eyes. How did this absolute nobody swipe his concealed weapon without making a single sound? Jite simply mocked his sloppy sheath, claiming it made the theft a total joke. But the math wasn't adding up. Mikhailov's spiritual awareness was absolutely maxed out. Yet in the blink of an eye, our main character materialized right behind his back, dropping a terrifying whisper straight into his ear. It was a deadly promise that would make any sane person completely shatter. He casually warned Mikhailov to stay out of dark alleyways, sounding exactly like an unhinged apex predator claiming its prey. Then he effortlessly tossed the blade onto the desk, declared their little chat finished, and turned to walk away. Mikhailov remained paralyzed, pure terror etched into his pale features. Meanwhile, Woo-young, who had been sweating out an ocean of anxiety, finally exhaled a massive sigh of relief, looking like a man who had just barely escaped a catastrophic death. Stepping out into the hall, Jite spotted Uriam leaning against the wall and immediately checked if she was holding up okay. Unbothered, Uriam brushed it off as a mere scratch, loudly flexing the unbreakable pride of the Red Dragon clan. Classic Uriam energy right there. Our guy gave a simple nod of approval, but her tough facade suddenly crumbled away. She paused, pouting slightly, and quietly asked if she had totally wrecked the situation, heavily blaming herself for dragging them into this chaotic mess. Frustration and guilt completely flooded her. She realized she should have kept her cool like an actual adult instead of going totally feral. But our main character shut that down instantly. With a deadpan stare, he told her she had handled it perfectly, leaving her totally stunned. Then, matching his signature frosty vibe, he offered some absolutely unhinged advice. The next time someone tried testing her boundaries, she should just finish the job completely out of sight. That was insanely dark, but Uriam was absolutely eating it up. A devilish smirk flashed across her face as she dared him not to regret those words. Jite, absolutely unfazed, promised he never would. Changing gears completely, he ordered her to pack her bags. Back at the house, a confused Uriam questioned their sudden relocation plan. He revealed they were transferring to the Layer Academy dorms. Uriam dramatically rolled her eyes, joking that the tiny yellow chick would probably lose her mind over this. Suddenly, a voice called out for Jite, making both of them snap their attention backward to find Woo-young approaching with his signature unsettling smile. Begging for one more chat, Jite coldly stated their business was already finished. But Woo-young desperately insisted he had a crucial proposal involving Uriam. But Woo-young quickly clarified he was actually bringing a massively profitable deal to the table. Shooting his shot, he offered her the ultimate throne as the official freshman representative at the prestigious Blue Dragon Academy, painting an absolute fantasy, endless scholarship funds, top-tier magical artifacts, massive media hype, basically the royal treatment. Our guy, sensing massive red flags, sharply questioned whether Woo-young even held enough authority to guarantee such an insane package alone. Woo-young just flashed a slimy grin, bragging about his incredibly tight connection with the powerful vice principal Namjoon. The moment that name dropped, Jite's expression shifted into an empty, terrifying darkness, and the tension in the air instantly skyrocketed. Deep in his mind, our main character was processing absolute horrors. Both Wei Yan and Namjoon were actually literal demonic humans. Unlike superhumans who embrace divine blessings, these monsters consume pure void. They willingly traded their fragile humanity for overwhelming, corrupting power, morphing into bloodthirsty beasts driven only by pure slaughter. These creatures were the rotting core of the world's deepest tragedies, and Jite had suffered devastating losses because of their kind during his grueling first and second lives. Honestly, his fists itched to violently crush Wei Yan every single time they locked eyes, but he forced down his lethal rage, resolving that Wei Yan deserved unimaginable suffering before tasting death. Masking his bloodlust, he smoothly stated that only Uriam's opinion actually mattered. After all, he was merely acting as her guardian. Wei Yan chuckled in agreement, playfully noting that her destiny was entirely in her own hands. Locking eyes with her, he aggressively hyped up the position, detailing the massive evolution happening within the Academy's walls, and pushing his vision of her ruling as the absolute leader during the massive year-end festival. Grasping her hand, he pleaded to forge destiny together, yet Uriam remained absolutely frozen and bluntly rejected his offer without hesitation. Leon stood paralyzed, convinced his hearing had failed. Her expression stayed ruthlessly blank as she doubled down. Pivoting toward Jitai, she casually suggested packing up. Leon completely snapped, desperately demanding why she had even attended the trials just to reject him. Uriam merely shrugged, confessing her room felt painfully boring, so she craved a chaotic brawl. Thick veins bulged across Leon's forehead. Verging on a total meltdown, he deployed his final trump card, gesturing outside to reveal a massive swarm of journalists hungering for his official statement regarding the brutal stabbing. He viciously blackmailed her, declaring her entire academy future rested upon his upcoming words. Choose wisely. Unfazed, Uriam spun around, delivered a final rejection, and strutted out with absolute main character energy. Glaring daggers, Leon hissed a dark warning about future regrets. Our savage queen didn't even flinch. She abandoned him utterly crushed. Now that is peak entertainment. Stepping outside, Uriam's cover was instantly blown. The moment she emerged, ravenous journalists ambushed her like starving predators, violently thrusting flashing cameras forward. One interviewer aggressively interrogated her regarding Sophia's recent bloodbath, demanding immediate answers. Another ruthlessly shoved a microphone closer, claiming the leaked footage had the entire nation spiraling into madness. They viciously questioned whether she had orchestrated this carnage purely for clout and clan revival, pressing her for her true motives for infiltrating the prestigious Blue Dragon Academy. Murderous rage flashed in Uriam's eyes. Yet before she exploded, our protagonist intervened, ordering the swarm back and demanding they leave a wounded student alone. Uriam instantly silenced him, claiming the spotlight for herself. Snatching the device from a stunned reporter, she boldly echoed their question, radiating pure, unadulterated confidence. Flashing a downright demonic smirk at the blinding lenses, she broadcasted her ultimate unfiltered desire, openly demanding the S-word. Damn, this menace possesses zero filter. The frame suddenly shifted toward breathtaking cherry blossoms, drifting gracefully across a ridiculously luxurious estate. Welcome to their elite academy dorm. Yugail absolutely lost her mind, shrieking like a glorious jackpot winner. Stepping inside the massive lounge area, sheer disbelief washed over her at the insane architectural drip. Even the stoic Uriam stood stunned, openly questioning if this majestic palace was truly their home. Yugail wasted 0 seconds, sprinting up the grand staircase to aggressively claim the ultimate master suite. Naturally, Uriam bolted behind her, roaring for dominance. Yugail struck absolute gold, discovering a colossal sanctuary bathed in golden sunlight, featuring a king-size mattress and a cinematic screen. She admired her prize and proudly declared this paradise hers. Suddenly, Uriam smashed through the doorway, a cigarette hanging loosely from her lips. Claiming the scenic balcony offered prime smoking territory, Uriam hijacked the suite. Panic instantly gripped Yugail, who frantically protested her first-place victory, pointing out that Uriam had previously wanted the adjacent suite. But Uriam unleashed a death glare, and Yugail instantly crumbled under the pressure, meekly accepting the neighboring quarters without another squeak. Trust me, nobody survives challenging that crimson menace. Meanwhile, Yugail surfaced inside a completely different chamber, delicately misting a massive sapphire egg while whispering sweet motherly praises and caressing its magical shell. The protagonist entered and questioned the indoor rainstorm. Flashing a warm smile, Yugail called it vital prenatal education, since oceanic dragons crave moisture. She happily lectured about mystical incubation, revealing that as it neared its hatching phase, the polymorph illusion would shatter, restoring its monstrous true scale. Pivoting, she mentioned the Academy's reigning gossip, Uriam. Jite instantly projected the viral interview footage, showcasing Uriam absolutely obliterating the journalism squad. They chuckled through the chaotic comment section. Several users worshipped her fearless, unhinged aura, while haters continuously trolled her. Suddenly, that scandalous S-word declaration blasted across the digital display. Panicking, Yubom desperately shielded the egg's non-existent ears, protecting her unborn child from such vulgar toxicity. That hilarious energy was destroying everyone watching. Later, the squad gathered inside the lavish central lounge. Lounging with her signature icy demeanor, Urium groaned about society overreacting to basic biological facts. Blinking in utter innocence, a deeply confused Yugayul questioned the mysterious vocabulary. Urium slowly turned, a wickedly corrupt grin spreading across her face as she offered forbidden knowledge, declaring it was officially time for some mature education. Pure terror flashed across Yugayul's face as she begged to be spared from this forbidden knowledge, desperately claiming her mom had warned her against such secrets. But Urium just crept closer, flashing a truly demonic smirk. Escaping was not an option. Jizmabi, she literally grabbed Yugayul's head, whispering absolute nonsense. She frantically wailed at Jite, begging him to rescue her from this utter madness. Honestly, bless her soul. Meanwhile, Jite and Yubom completely ignored these chaotic dragon siblings. Flash forward to the crack of dawn, Urium was utterly passed out. Suddenly, Yugayul busted down the door, shrieking about a massive emergency. Urium woke up, radiating pure rage, cursing and demanding what on earth justified this rude awakening after her sleepless night. Yugayul instantly accused her of binge-watching sketchy content again. Urium just flashed a wicked smirk, proudly confessing her spicy late-night marathon. That made Yugayul totally snap. She aggressively dragged Urium downstairs, shouting that playtime was officially over. Urium lethally threatened murder if this was fake news. Downstairs, the whole squad was assembled. While Urium looked entirely unbothered, she demanded answers. Yubom crouched beside the massive egg, her voice trembling with insane tension as she announced Uriel's imminent awakening. Everyone stared as the shell fractured with a blinding magical glow, making Yugayul squeal loudly. A majestic new life was literally entering the world. But right then, our guy's expression completely shattered. Devastating flashbacks hit him like a truck. The last birth he had witnessed was an absolute nightmare, far from joyful. His trauma dragged him back to a bleeding battlefield, where a sobbing mother had begged for her infant's survival. But his comrade delivered the crushing truth. It was too late. The newborn perished instantly, the hospital reduced to ashes and the world literally burning around them. They had been utterly powerless. Our main character carried this soul-crushing weight in his eyes, agonizing over that tragic fate. Snapping back to reality, he stood paralyzed beside the three girls, questioning why this traumatic ghost had resurfaced today. As anticipation peaked, the shell completely shattered. A tiny blue claw emerged, followed by an adorable baby dragon, boasting giant, innocent eyes. Her cuteness level was straight-up lethal. Yubon radiated pure joy, softly welcoming the newborn miracle into the world. Yugaiwell's eyes practically sparkled with stars. She was totally malfunctioning from happiness as the little dragon adorably rubbed her sleepy eyes. Meet Gyol, whose name literally translates to winter. As Yubom tenderly toweled her off, Chiche questioned where she had mastered such delicate care. Yubom casually mentioned her own mother had done this too, except using her tongue. She then softly offered him a chance to cradle the baby dragon, but he silently declined. Instantly, Yugaiwell hyped up and aggressively begged to hold the tiny creature. Yubom cautiously transferred the baby, strictly warning Yugaiwell to handle her with extreme care, since her scales were super fragile. So incredibly soft, Yugaiwell vowed to protect the tiny creature. Embracing her fiercely, closing her eyes, she declared passionately that this absolute warmth was healing her very soul. But suddenly, a mischievous, chaotic glint flashed across Yugaiwell's golden eyes as she challenged Yoriam to hold baby Gyol. Before the fiery girl could even process it, the tiny dragon was shoved right into her personal space. Uriam completely panicked, but Yubom calmly ordered her to chill out and show some gentleness. Meanwhile, the little hatchling let out an adorable yawn, completely unbothered. The usually explosive Uriam was now frozen, awkwardly holding the squirming little dragon, staring down in absolute stunned silence. Yugaiwell flashed a triumphant smirk, asking if the hothead finally understood the sheer, overwhelming joy of cuddling their youngest sister. Uriam desperately tried maintaining her tough facade but reluctantly muttered that the tiny kid was undeniably adorable. Then she whipped around toward our main character, aggressively demanding to know why he was acting so suspiciously distant when everyone else had taken a turn. Yugaiwell chimed in, whining that little Giri would be heartbroken if Jite rejected her. Yet our guy remained standing there, an impenetrable fortress of silence. A wicked demonic grin spread across Uriam's face as she mercilessly mocked his untouchable lone wolf act, accusing him of behaving like some superior being. Suddenly, she threatened to launch the baby dragon right at his face, forcing his hand. Yugaiwell shrieked in absolute terror, screaming and asking if her sister had actually lost her mind. Uriam's smile morphed into pure chaotic evil as she boldly declared that her single ultimate mission since moving into this house was shattering Jite's unbreakable composure. Without hesitating, this absolute menace actually tossed the helpless little Jite high into the air as Yugaiwell wailed in absolute panic. But Jite didn't even flinch. Moving like lightning, he snatched the baby dragon single-handedly, radiating absolute dominance. Uriam groaned in massive disappointment at his zero reaction, while a traumatized Yugaiwell mumbled that her older sister was totally unhinged. Yubom glided over with a proud, gentle smile, suggesting that he might as well shower the baby with some affection since she was already securely in his arms. Looking uncharacteristically nervous, our hero hesitantly extended a single finger, delicately stroking her head while awkwardly asking if he was doing it right. Jill beamed with pure joy, and Jill immediately began rapidly snapping smartwatch photos, declaring this legendary, heartwarming moment had to be immortalized. Suddenly, Jill proposed an epic family photo to celebrate Jill's awakening, magically producing a vibrant red rose and leaving Jill utterly speechless. Jill offered a playful wink, revealing she had prepared special props for this exact aesthetic, shocking everyone with her intense dedication. She confidently tucked the rose behind Jitae's ear, then placed a delicate blue blossom on Jill. Jitae stood completely paralyzed, his soul seemingly leaving his body, as Urium erupted into hysterical laughter at his absolutely absurd appearance. But Jill beamed with measly assured him he looked dashing, prompting our desperate protagonist to beg them to just snap the picture and end his suffering. Urium furiously tried escaping the frame, whining about the cringe, but Jill ruthlessly dragged her right back into the spotlight. This honestly feels like a found family. Once the legendary photo was taken, our Jill turned toward Jill, questioning her next plan with Jill. Jill revealed her grand plan, teaching the baby polymorph through a mystical magic transfer. This advanced technique channels pure mana into another soul to instantly grant them a spell, but it comes with a heavy toll. It literally burns away the caster's own lifespan. Yolmos J. Jill Bomb remained absolutely unshakable in her resolve. Mature dragons like her Yoram and Jill had already mastered disguising their true terrifying forms back in their home dimension. But little Jill was completely defenseless. Lifting the hatchling with boundless affection, Jill softly whispered that dragons mature at terrifying speeds, and she desperately wanted to gift Jill fragments of pure happiness and unforgettable memories before she outgrew these precious family bonds. Our main character gave a firm nod, pledging his absolute support. Instantly, Jill's eyes turned pleading as she softly asked if he could anchor her during this dangerous magic transfer. Jitae offered a single decisive nod, but Yolbom playfully scolded him for standing far away like a soulless statue, demanding he close the distance. With absolute deadpan seriousness, he claimed there was zero logical reason to sit that intimately, but Yolbom relentlessly pushed her case. She dramatically argued that the massive mana drain could make her collapse and drop poor Gale, adding that the guilt of the baby getting hurt would crush her. She was pouring on the theatrical drama, but Jitae just pierced her with his unbreakable poker face. Defeated at last, our stoic main character surrendered, taking a seat beside her while sighing that resistance was completely futile. The instant their shoulders brushed, Yolbom felt his rock-solid physique. Blushing furiously, she nervously whispered how hard it was. Confused, Jitae questioned her, causing Yolbom to panic and desperately stammer that she meant the sofa's texture, totally backpedaling from the massive misunderstanding. Unfazed, our guy seriously analyzed the expensive sofa materials, missing the social cue entirely. Desperate to shift gears, Yolbom immediately sparked her mana, a brilliant emerald aura erupting around her and the tiny hatchling. With a deep breath, she initiated the perilous magic transfer sequence. Fast forward through the aftermath, a few peaceful days rolled by since that intense magical awakening. Yolbom's energy hit absolute rock bottom. She practically melted into the couch cushions, completely drained, with literal steam radiating off her overheated body, whispering faintly that the agonizing task was over. Looming above her, our main character quietly acknowledged her massive effort, and a breathless thank you escaped her lips. Attempting to stand, her legs completely betrayed her, leaving her staggering like the walking dead. She pleaded with our guy to feed tiny Gale and handle burping duty during her power nap, strictly warning him to snap her awake if any absolute chaos erupted. Suddenly, her vision blurred, and her exhausted body just entirely gave out. With lightning reflexes, our main character snatched her mid-fall, cradling her collapsing frame effortlessly, defying gravity like it was absolutely nothing. Utterly stone-faced, he announced he was hauling her to bed. Instantly, Yolbom's cheeks flared a deep crimson, her panicked eyes darting everywhere. Scooping her up in a smooth bridal carry, Yolbom meekly confessed through her blush that being hauled around like royalty was intensely humiliating. Meeting her gaze, he playfully jabbed that she somehow retained enough stamina to whine. Yolbom breathed out a weak giggle and questioned if her weight was crushing him, definitely fishing for reassurance. Without skipping a single microsecond, our protagonist declared she was practically weightless. That unexpected sweet talk clearly melted Yolbom's heart. Gently depositing her onto the mattress, he wrapped her tightly, and within seconds, Yolbom plunged straight into a coma-like slumber. Moving like a ghost, our main character silently sealed the bedroom door shut. The moment his boots hit the hallway, intense waves of bizarre sapphire mana started pulsing violently out of the living area. His danger sense spiked, and he investigated immediately, only to be blinded by a violent glowing azure aura consuming the entire space. As the blinding flash faded, a tiny kid rocking waist-length turquoise hair perched on the couch, examining her own palms like they were some legendary alien artifact. Jide froze for a heartbeat, desperately attempting to project a warm, welcoming dad vibe. Yet his underlying anxiety was screaming loud and clear. This was officially an unprecedented disaster. Before that could even be processed, the scene cut to the Lair District Precinct, where a squad of detectives were gossiping relentlessly about our main character's recent god-tier performance. He was single-handedly dismantling entire criminal syndicates in mere days, effortlessly cracking cold cases the supernatural task force couldn't solve in months. A wildly overhyped colleague cornered him, aggressively offering an expensive dinner celebration since our guy was officially the golden boy of the precinct. A female officer brutally roasted him, cackling that he was just exploiting the corporate credit card. Desperately defending his shattered ego, the veteran claimed he fully intended to fund the after-party himself,